Thank you. Good morning, and thank you all for coming out here today for Wilmington's Veterans Day celebration. It's nice to see such a good crowd with so many young children here. Before I ask our acting chaplain, Eddie Williams, who's the quartermaster of the... Thank you. Good morning, and thank you all for coming out here today for Wilmington's Veterans Day celebration. It's nice to see such a good crowd with so many young children here. Before I ask our acting chaplain, Eddie Williams, who's the quartermaster of the Wilmington Veterans of Foreign Wars, to come to the podium and offer a prayer, I would like to please have a moment of silence for all the victims of the actions of Fort Hood last week. Thank you.
An everlasting King in heaven and earth, we render the acknowledgement of thy supreme dominion over us in gratitude for our paternal solitude and watchfulness. As we gather here in humble recognition of thy divine providence, we beseech you to usher into our world of confusion and doubt the peace and tranquility which alone can come from thee. Bless and protect our nation. Be merciful to our honored dead, the memory of whose valor, courage, and heroism inspire us to noble action and to eternal vigilance in the preservation of our priceless liberty and our inalienable rights of enduring happiness. Guide and direct our minds to a thorough understanding of our duties to thee, to our country, and to one another. Awaken in our hearts the desire and will to accomplish the ideals for which this nation exists, so that out of our determination and endeavor there may emerge a better world. Amen.
Thank you, Eddie. And please have all the commanders of the veterans units to report to the flagpole to assist in raising of the flag. All leaders of the veterans units and flag units to prepare your groups to render honor to the flag of the United States, and those attending the ceremony to join us in the Wilmington High School Band as they play our national anthem.
Present! Halt!
Thank you. On this, our ninth Veterans Day since the attacks on September 11th, let us take a moment to remember those past and present who have served our nation in uniform. This Veterans Day is especially poignant given the atrocity that took place at Fort Hood, where those who stepped forward to serve were cut down as they were preparing to deploy. The thoughts and prayers of the entire country are with the wounded and the families of the fallen. Every year I try to put a few words in writing to remind us all of the sacrifices made by so many men and women over the years who have served and are currently serving in the military. And in my position as a veteran service officer, I am in complete awe of the caliber of men and women serving in the military today, and that is including the 139 new veterans we have right here in Wilmington since 9/11, and all those currently serving on active duty and the reserves from Wilmington. But today I would like to ask all here to keep a special kind of veteran in our thoughts and prayers. I'm talking about the men and women who have been injured while in service to our great nation. Of the 35,000 plus wounded in action since 9/11, over 16,000 of them did not return to duty within 72 hours of the injury. And there are over 3,500 veterans right now being compensated through the VA for post-traumatic stress disorder. And as of July of this year, there are over 1,200 amputee veterans of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. These brave men and women will have to deal with their emotional and physical scars for the rest of their lives. Let's let them know that they are not alone. To all our veterans, past and present, and your families, I salute you and thank you for your service. I'd like to now introduce State Representative Jim Maselli to come up and say a few words.
Thank you, Lou. When I leave here, I'm not leaving to go elsewhere except to the town of Tewksbury to participate in their ceremony, so I appreciate your putting me on this early. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, on each year, we gather as a community, as a commonwealth, and as a grateful nation to honor those men and women who have made possible all the freedoms and liberties that we have today. We stand here in freedom because of their service, able to speak with a free will and an open mind. We are able to practice our religion of choice without fear of censorship or retribution, and to enjoy all the other freedoms that we have at times taken for granted. But we are still a nation at war, and we must recognize the valuable price that our servicemen and women are paying in Iraq and Afghanistan. Their lives and their families' lives are put in hold, and many are changed forever. As Lou mentioned earlier, we have a somber reminder of this with the death of 12 soldiers at Fort Hood. George Washington told us, "The willingness with which our young people are likely to serve in any war, no matter how justified, shall be reflective of how they perceive veterans of earlier wars, how they were treated and appreciated by our nation." In other words, you're not going to get a lot of people to step forward all the time unless we show that we appreciate the price that our veterans have paid. Knowing the urgent need to support our servicemen and women, my colleagues in the House and Senate recently passed legislation to give our veterans stronger support, more improved benefits, and the unwavering recognition they have so honorably earned. We've increased the bonus. There's extra bonuses now for second deployment. These are monies that were already in the area that should be used. We've given better oversight. We're putting together a study for a cognitive brain unit. We're going to create more beds for veterans. And what I say then is, it's about time. It's something you've earned, something that you deserve. Massachusetts has always been a leader among states in providing this assistance to veterans and their families. And that's what we should continue to do. As we are gathered here on this Veterans Day, let us personally thank all the veterans that have gathered with us. The ultimate satisfaction they can have is to know how much we appreciate and honor all the freedoms that they have made possible for us through their personal service and sacrifice. Let us also continue to pray every day for those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice, for their families who have lost loved ones both here and abroad, to ensure a free America. And so do you, my veterans out there, standing out there, having paid the price for us, having given us the ability to enjoy those things that we have today, and the 441,000 veterans of Massachusetts, our grateful community, and our proud Commonwealth say thank you for your service. Thank you very much.
It's now my honor and my privilege to introduce a gentleman that's been the National Sergeant-at-Arms for the VFW, Veterans of Foreign Wars organization, for the past 9 years, Brian T. O'Brien.
Good morning. Thank you, Lou. Today I have the distinct and the singular honor of representing the veterans of foreign wars of the United States. And as we are gathered here today, just as we have gathered before, to remember those who fought, those still missing, and those who gave the last full measure of devotion to our country. Veterans Day is set aside to remember every man and woman who has taken up arms to defend our republic. We honor every soldier, every sailor, every airman and marine and Coast Guardsman who have gave some, if not all, the best years of their lives to the service of the United States and stood ready to give life itself on our behalf. 25 million veterans walk among us, and our nation thanks them all. On this special day, our hearts and thoughts turn to all veterans. Let us reflect on their great achievements and sacrifices that preserved our freedom and our way of life. With gratitude, let us recall their heroic accomplishments and thank them for their unselfish devotion to duty. They are indeed worthy of the solemn tribute of a grateful nation. Our prayers and well wishes turn to those who were disabled while serving their country. We devote special attention to our veterans who are sick and incapacitated in hospitals, nursing homes, and VA facilities around the country and throughout the world. Let us show them through our actions that we remember and we honor them. There could be no better nor no more tangible expression of gratitude. Americans veterans are drawn from several generations in every walk of life. They are Americans who remembered the swift victory of the Persian Gulf War, of the long, bitter Cold War vigil. They are the centennials of liberty who patrolled the steamy jungles of Vietnam and suffered the unforgiving cold of a Korean winter. They are the veterans who served under MacArthur and Bradley, Patton, and Eisenhower, who not only preserved freedom's light and our liberty, but in the process saved the liberty of the free world and forever after became known as the greatest generation. Some of today's veterans are in combat in Iraq and Afghanistan at this very moment. Their mission is clear: defeat terrorism and free the oppressed. Sadly, for some, that means not only driving home to their objective, but ultimately to the judgment seat of God. There is a special sadness that accompanies the death of a serviceman or woman, but we are never quite good enough to them. We can't be, because they gave us far beyond what our mortal powers can repay. The families of the lost carry a burden of grief that will in time lighten, but shall never be completely lifted. They are but mere boys, or they were mere boys and girls, when they died in the springtime of their youth. They gave up two lives, the one they were living and the one they would have lived. They gave all to their country, and for us, all we can do is remember. And so, we recall today with fondness the faces and voices of the fallen. In most cases, we do not know the dignity of their birth, but we do know the glory and honor of their death. To those veterans assembled here today, we pay tribute and honor to your story. Sacrifice, self-service, and loyalty were your watchwords. Against unseemingly insurmountable odds, you possess the will to win and the sure knowledge that in war there is no substitute for victory, that should you fail, the nation would be destroyed. We remember today those who were called upon to give all a person could give, and the sacrifice you were prepared to make if it were demanded of you. Our liberties, our values, all for which America stands for, is safe today because brave men and women have been willing to face the fire of freedom's gate, and we thank God for their valor. From the very day George Washington took command, the uniform of the United States has always stood for courage and decency, representing a shining beacon of hope in a world of darkness and despair. In closing, I am reminded of General Matthew Ridgway, who, the night before D-Day, some 60 years ago, tossed sleepless in his cot and spoke to the Lord. In the darkness of his tumult, he listened for a promise that God made to Joshua. I shall not fail thee, nor shall I forsake thee. Let we who remain today make a combat with our fellow veterans and families of our POWs and MIAs, and the still bereaved widows, widowers, and orphans of those who made the supreme sacrifice. A promise in the words of which General Ridgway listened. I shall not fail thee. I shall not forsake thee. God bless all of you for coming today. God bless our veterans and their families, our troops who are serving in harm's way, safeguarding freedom and liberty around the world. And God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. It's now my privilege to introduce a gentleman that's been a chairperson together so that we might stand and do what is our fundamental obligation as Americans, to be able to stand and thank those who have made so many sacrifices, many of which we know and can calculate and can understand, and many of which we will never fully understand. And to stand here today and to recognize, as we look around at the veterans who stand here in uniform, our police department, our fire department, the band, the scouts, all of the organizations that wear a uniform that means something, you inspire us. And we need to think this day about the fact, as Lou mentioned, that this is the 9th Veterans Day that we will have stood here since the attacks of 9/11. And we need to think about the fact that we are in a war on terror in this nation. And that war is different than some wars in recent memory. Sometimes the enemy is not as identifiable, but always as lethal. And in this protracted war, we see things that are done and asked of our veterans that we have not seen in recent memory as well. Deployment after deployment after deployment, in a way that surely takes its toll on the men and women that raise their right hand and swear to defend the ideals that make this nation the greatest that the earth has ever known. And so we think about the fact that in those multiple deployments, we see the loss of limbs, we see the increase of post-traumatic stress disorder, which used to be known as combat fatigue, and we see an increase in the percentage of our homeless population that are veterans. That is a call to action. And I'm pleased, as Representative Maselli referred to, that the House and the Senate, all of my colleagues, joined together yesterday and passed into law veterans legislation that recognizes the trying nature of these times for our veterans and requires that the Commonwealth pay an additional welcome home bonus for the return from each deployment of our men and women in uniform, that requires us to study the housing needs of our veterans population and find ways to meet those needs as quickly as possible, and that recognizes that we have an obligation to look at traumatic brain injury and other kinds of consequences of war that maybe we haven't understood as well as we should have in the past, but that we have a fundamental obligation to understand now and to address. I'm pleased that Governor Patrick today will sign that bill into law, and he'll do it as a reflection of the priorities that the citizens of the Commonwealth, all of us who stand here today, share with regard to our veterans. And even as he does that, and we take a major step forward, we need to think about the other steps that need to be taken. Because as we move forward and recognize the newest generation of veterans, we can never forget those who have served and created that legacy of service that they share. And that means when we see budgetary reductions in the soldiers and sailors' homes in Chelsea and Holyoke, we need to find a way to make those reductions change and to make those services whole. And it means that when Joe Steen and veterans of the American Legion in Wilmington suggest legislation that will teach all of our children the importance of that flag that is the symbol that unites every veteran and the service that they have given to our country, that those things be taught to our kids in school, that become law, so that we can be unified and confident that future generations will honor the flag as have all of their predecessors. Yes, there's work to be done. There are circumstances to be understood. But the fact that we gather here today points out the fact that in this community, we are committed to doing the work that needs to be done. Our veterans deserve nothing less. They have given us a legacy that we do not share with citizens of any other nation in the world. We are special because we have ideals of freedom and liberty and justice for all
And those things have been given life with the sacrifice of so many, not because they had to, but because we asked. And now we need to ask ourselves to stand for them, and I'm confident that we will. It's an honor to be with you. I'm sorry that I too have to depart to try to attend another commemoration, but I will leave this green proud of this community and proud of what we share and our love for American veterans. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Bruce. I'd also like to recognize a few people out here that are town leaders. Town manager Michael Kyra is out here. Members of the Board of Selectmen, Mike McCoy, Mike Shampoo, Ray Lepore, and the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, who I'm going to invite to come up and say a few words, Mike Newhouse.
Thank you, Lou. Good morning. To our veterans and guests, family and friends, on behalf of the Wilmington Board of Selectmen, welcome to the Town Common, and thank you all for coming. It is, as always, an honor and a privilege to be a small part of this morning's program and to share a few thoughts with you. When I think about the significance of Veterans Day, the first thing that always comes to mind is the importance of a simple, sincere, and collective thank you. Your presence here today tells me that you agree. Indeed, Veterans Day is an opportunity to publicly acknowledge the extraordinary sacrifices that our men and women in uniform have made to the cause of liberty. It is a chance to come together and to recognize our servicemen and women for their defense of freedom at home and abroad. But even as we offer this recognition, I always find it difficult to articulate just how truly awesome this gift of freedom really is. It's simply overwhelming to think about just how lucky we are to live in this great country. When we think about the many blessings that we have, the limitless opportunity, and the prosperity that exists only here in the United States of America, our thoughts inescapably turn to the veterans who have sacrificed so much to protect our way of life for nearly 2.5 centuries. Last night, as I collected my thoughts about what to say here this morning, I began to consider the many privileges that come with life in America. As simple or as profound as these many freedoms might be, it is our veterans that have secured each and every one of them for us. In America, a man can witness the birth of his son, knowing full well that as long as he is healthy and willing to work hard, he can make something of himself. In America, a boy chooses his own destination, rather than being condemned to a course that history has chosen as his predetermined destiny. In America, we don't simply have opinions, we express them. We do so freely, without fear of reprisal or oppression. In America, a woman can kiss her child goodbye and send her off to school, confident that she will return home safely at the end of the day. In America, we believe that our military is the best fighting force in the world, and that its ability to wage war is matched only by its ability to preserve peace. I'll grant you that sometimes our faith in America is shaken. We're frustrated and weary from those who abuse our freedom and who try to turn this land of opportunity into a land of dishonest opportunism. We're left to ponder sometimes, where's my bailout? We're outraged by citizens and non-citizens alike, and even by public officials from the highest levels, who are all too quick to criticize this country's standing in the world, but who cry foul when they are likewise criticized, or who, when challenged, run for cover under the very blanket of freedom that they profess to despise and which they have resolved to destroy. True, our sense of security and safety is sometimes rattled, either by a meticulously planned act of terror or by a senseless and violent act of hate, desperation, or even insanity. But notwithstanding our frustration, our anger, or our fear,
Invariably, time after time throughout this country's great history, when the chips are down, our Marines, our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and guardsmen rise to the challenge. Their resolve, their sacrifice, their courage, and their single-minded determination to protect freedom inspires us. They lead us and they restore our faith in the American way of life. They reinvigorate our confidence in democracy and freedom, and they renew and strengthen our sense of security. To our veterans, it is for this leadership and commitment and sacrifice and inspiration that we honor you today. Please accept our simple expression of gratitude and respect, and know that your service and your courage is appreciated not only today, but throughout the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Before we call the honor guards together and place the wreath, I would like to invite World War II veteran Gordon Sightman, World War II veteran Nick DeCola, World War II veteran Tim Santry, and World War II veteran Joe Balistreri to come up and assist us place the wreath. And if there's any other World War II veterans out here today, please come on up and assist us to place the wreath at the monument. The honor guards, please come to attention. Have the firing squad fire a volley of 3, and the Minutemen to fire their cannon. Again, I would like to thank everybody for coming out here today to show their respects, and that we do remember all our veterans. I would like to thank the Chief of Police, Mike Magonis, and his men for an excellent job they do every year at all our ceremonies and our firing squad here today. Also, Chief Ed Bradbury of the Fire, and their honor guard, who also participates in all our functions and all the ceremonies that we have. Town Manager Michael Kyra, for his support of veterans of the town, for hiring a great veteran service officer. Superintendent of Public Works, Don Onisett, for his excellent job, and his crew have done and continue to do upkeep of the town's parks and commons. And thank everybody for participating in this celebration and those who came to observe the ceremonies. I'd like to also thank the Wilmington High School Band, the Wilmington Town Museum, and the Historical Commission, who put on a display of Wilmington war memorabilia over at the 4th of July building. It will be open until 1 o'clock today, and then from 6 to 8 o'clock tonight. I'd like to ask everyone present to take a moment and offer a silent prayer for our men and women who are overseas and ask for their safe return. And to every veteran here and their families, from the bottom of my heart, I say thank you. Thank you for your service. We will never forget. We'll ask the band to play a march and have the veterans units pass a review. Thank you all for coming.
For July of this year, there are over 1,200 amputee veterans of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. These brave men and women will have to deal with their emotional and physical scars for the rest of their lives. Let's let them know that they are not alone. To all our veterans, past and present, and your families, I salute you and thank you for your service.
I'd like to now introduce State Representative Jim Maselli to come up and say a few words.
Thank you, Lou. When I leave here, I'm not leaving to go elsewhere except to the town of Tewksbury to participate in their ceremony, so I appreciate your putting me on this early. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, on each year, we gather as a community, as a commonwealth, and as a grateful nation to honor those men and women who have made possible all the freedoms and liberties that we have today. We stand here in freedom because of their service, able to speak with a free will and an open mind. We are able to practice our religion of choice without fear of censorship or retribution, and to enjoy all the other freedoms that we have at times taken for granted. But we are still a nation at war, and we must recognize the valuable price that our servicemen and women are paying in Iraq and Afghanistan. Their lives and their families' lives are put in hold, and many are changed forever. As Lou mentioned earlier, we have a somber reminder of this with the death of 12 soldiers at Fort Hood. George Washington told us, "The willingness with which our young people are likely to serve in any war, no matter how justified, shall be reflective of how they perceive veterans of earlier wars, how they were treated and appreciated by our nation." In other words, you're not going to get a lot of people to step forward all the time unless we show that we appreciate the price that our veterans have paid. Knowing the urgent need to support our servicemen and women, my colleagues in the House and Senate recently passed legislation to give our veterans stronger support, more improved benefits, and the unwavering recognition they have so honorably earned. We've increased the bonus. There's extra bonuses now for second deployment. These are monies that were already in the area that should be used. We've given better oversight. We're putting together a study for a cognitive brain unit. We're going to create more beds for veterans. And what I say then is, it's about time. It's something you've earned, something that you deserve. Massachusetts has always been a leader among states in providing this assistance to veterans and their families. And that's what we should continue to do. As we are gathered here on this Veterans Day, let us personally thank all the veterans that have gathered with us. The ultimate satisfaction they can have is to know how much we appreciate and honor all the freedoms that they have made possible for us through their personal service.